Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about MV Ganga Vilas, which is being pitched as the largest river cruise in the world. We also talk about the story of a gangster who now stars in a movie inspired by his own life. But first, we talk about cancer, the deadly disease that kills nearly 10 million people every year. Last week, a report by the American Cancer Society noted that deaths due to cancer have reduced by 33% in the United States since 1991. This means that 3.8 million fewer deaths are happening because of cancer in the country. And the report credited early detection, lower rates of smoking, and improvements in cancer treatment for the overall reduction. Now, awareness about the dangers of smoking and advancement in cancer treatment has happened across the world. So has such a reduction happened in India as well? Turns out that this is sadly not the case. In India, deaths due to cancer have only been increasing. In this segment, Indian Express's Anona Dutt, who reports on health for the paper, joins us to talk about the status of cancer in India and the reasons why the numbers remain high. Anona, could you begin by talking about the extent to which cancer deaths have been increasing in India? And is there a report or a study like this US one that can provide us with more information regarding it?
No, we do not have any study like that per se to, show what is going on in India. But we do have cancer registries, which is, population-based cancer registries that record the kind of cancers that are being diagnosed in the country. And based on that, we estimate, and it's an estimate, it's not like the absolute number, but the estimate is that we have around 14.6 lakh new cancer cases every year, around 14 lakh. And this has actually increased, if we look at the data of the last 3 years, it was 13.9 lakh in 2020, 14.2 lakh in 2021, and 14.6 lakh in 2022. So the numbers are going up, and similarly, mortality has also seen an increasing trend over these 3 years.
And when we say that cases and deaths have been increasing, is that the case with all kinds of cancers?
So in India, if you see, there are certain cancers for which the incidence as well as the deaths related to it has gone down. And then there are certain cancers which have gone up. Now, most of the mortality is dependent on the incidence of the cancer in India. So, for example, the number of cases of cervical cancers have gone down over the years. If we talk about cervical cancer, the incidence was something around 45 cases per lakh population 50 years back. And now it has reduced to 10 cases per lakh population. That's what the data suggests. Then there are some smoking and chewing tobacco related cancers like the oral cancer, cancer of the tongue, cancer of the throat. All of the incidence of these have also reduced with the effort of the government to reduce smoking and chewing tobacco, especially smoking in public places where people would also be exposed to secondary smoke. So these cancers have gone down.
Okay, so the number of cervical cancer cases and those related to tobacco have been going down. So then what are the kind of cancers that have been increasing?
So on the flip side, we see an increase in, say, breast cancers. And if you talk to Dr. G.K. Rath, who headed the National Cancer Institute of AIIMS and has been working in cancer for 40 years, he says that the reasons for the reducing of cervical cancer and increasing breast cancer go hand in hand. So, for example, cervical cancer cases go down if you have fewer children, have children at a later age, things like that. But on the flip side, you have more cases of breast cancer if you get married late, have your first child at a later age, and, don't breastfeed them if you have consume more protein. So a lot of the reasons for reducing cervical cancer are reasons for increasing breast cancer incidence. Other than that, the doctors also pointed that lung cancer could be important in India in the coming years, especially as we see, a lot of people living in a lot of polluted environment. So that is roughly the trend that we see in India.
Okay, so far we have talked about the number of cancer cases that we see in India. But now could you talk about the level of cancer treatment that is currently available in the country?
So, advancement in cancer treatment that has happened across the world, and it's not like India is lagging behind in getting these new therapies. We had Express Adda recently where Dr. Siddharth Mukherjee, a renowned oncologist, was talking about cancer treatments that have changed over the years. And in fact, he picked up the example of breast cancer and said because of newer therapies that are available, the breast cancer mortality has dropped by 1% every year over the last 20 years in the US.
I mean, in breast cancer, for instance, the changes have been extraordinary. So in breast cancer, there's been a drop of about 1% in mortality every year for the last 20 odd years in the United States. Now, 1% sounds like a very small number, but if you take it across 20, 25 odd years, that would be a 25% reduction in overall mortality from breast cancer. And that's because new drugs are in the armamentarium. There have been new ways of treating breast cancer. In some cases, in the case of leukemia, for instance, acute leukemia in kids, we're actually figuring out how to decrease the amount of chemotherapy rather than increase the amount of chemotherapy. I'll give you one.
And it's not that we do not get these therapies in India. We have these therapies in India, and even the more recent cellular therapies like CAR T cell therapy, which modify the immune system to attack the cancers, those have also started coming into the country. So definitely there has been an improvement in the cure rates. But the issue in India is not that whether we have these treatments. It's whether these treatments are accessible. And that, for the most part, for most of the population, it is not. Like the newer therapies can cost, like a CAR T therapy can cost up to crores of rupees, and that is not affordable for most people. Then when we're talking about comprehensive treatment, which at least the three basics have to be there, which is the chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and surgical removal of cancer. These are the basics. These have to be there. And even then, a lot of hospitals you would not see all three combined together. You would see patients rushing from one hospital to the other or one department to the other in government hospitals to access care, which can, in fact, delay the treatment.
Right. And on top of that, like you mentioned, the cost of treatment also remains high. So what do experts say can be done about these problems?
So what the experts have suggested is that if we need to bring down the mortality, we need to consolidate these services and also increase the services at the same time, because cancers are going up. So we have to do both. We have to ensure that this holistic treatment, and the three things that I mentioned are just the basics. Then there are diagnostics, which should include nutrition. Everything has to come together. Palliative care for people who are in end stages of cancer. All of that has to come together in comprehensive treatment, and that is one suggestion that doctors have made, other than just expanding facilities.
Okay, and when we look at the US cancer report, are there any other big takeaways for India, especially in terms of how we can bring down the mortality rates?
So the decline in the cancer mortality, even in the US, has mainly been because of a lot of preventive measures. Of course, over the years, there has definitely been an improvement in treatments. And like I mentioned, the case of breast cancer, as Dr. Siddharth Mukherjee said. But a lot of it has also got to do with just preventing cancers. And one good example is, of course, the cervical cancer, which more than 80% of cases are caused by, previous lingering HPV infection. So if you're able to prevent these HPV infections, and we know the strains which usually lead to cervical cancer, then we can reduce the incidence of cervical cancer. And it's a vaccine preventable cancer, in fact. So we do have an HPV vaccine. It was very expensive until recently, and we didn't have any government program to get the shot, except for in a couple of states probably. But now Serum Institute of India has, in collaboration with the government, developed a cheaper quadrivalent HPV vaccine, and we should see a government immunization program for HPV soon. So that is one preventive step which we can take. And anyway, incidence of cervical cancer is coming down, but why not, still do something that can be done to prevent it. Second would be, again, smoking cessation. And over the years, we have seen a declining trend in both like chewing tobacco and cigarette and bidi smoking. So we have to continue that effort, ensure that fewer people smoke. That can get rid of cancers, which is something that was pointed out in the US study as well. So we are following in their footsteps, but it will take some time.
And next we talk about the Ganga Vilas river cruise.
गंगा विलास भारत निर्मित एक ऐसा क्रूज जो दुनिया में सबसे लंबी नदी यात्रा एक सूत्र में तय करेगा। यह क्रूज वाराणसी से डिब्रूगढ़ के बीच संचालित होगा। भारत और बांग्लादेश।
Last week, Prime Minister Narendra Modi flagged off MV Ganga Vilas, which is being pitched as the world's longest river cruise that is planning to sail around 3,200 kilometers.
आज मेरी काशी से डिब्रूगढ़ के बीच दुनिया की सबसे लंबी नदी जल यात्रा गंगा विलास क्रूज का शुभारंभ हुआ है। इससे पूर्वी
The luxury cruise began its journey from Varanasi and is scheduled to reach Assam in about 8 weeks. During this time, the cruise will sail through historical ports and passengers will have a chance to visit 50 tourist spots across different states. In this segment, Indian Express's Divya A tells us more about it.
On January 13, Prime Minister Narendra Modi flagged off the Ganga River cruise from Varanasi, which happens to be his parliamentary constituency. It is supposed to be a 51-day cruise journey and is being pitched by the government as the world's longest river cruise. It starts at Varanasi and is expected to reach its final destination, Dibrugarh in Assam, on March 1. So it's a luxury vessel, MV Ganga Vilas. It has 3 decks with 18 suites on board, which can host 36 tourists at a time. And there are all luxury amenities like the spa, the restaurant, customized catering on board. All those kind of 5-star facilities are available.
Right, and could you talk about the route that this cruise will take and the kind of things that the passengers will be able to see during this 51-day period?
See, the route, it's a very long route. Over 51 days, they are going to cover 3,200 kilometers. During its journey, it will make stops to cover various historical, cultural, and religious spots, including, of course, starting with the famous Ganga Aarti in Varanasi and the Buddhist site of Sarnath in Varanasi, and then going up to Majuli, the river island in Assam. The travelers will also get to visit the Bihar School of Yoga and the Vikramshila University. The cruise will traverse through the Sundarbans and the Bay of Bengal Delta, as well as the Kaziranga National Park. And it is also being pitched as an international cruise because out of the 51 days, 15 days will be spent in the waters of Bangladesh, and it will also touch Dhaka during its journey. In India, it will navigate through several states, Assam, Bihar, Bengal, Jharkhand, and the voyage is packed with 50 tourist spots, including World Heritage spots, national parks, river ghats, and major cities like Patna in Bihar, Sahibganj in Jharkhand, Kolkata in West Bengal, Dhaka, of course, in Bangladesh, and Guwahati, and then finally Dibrugarh in Assam.
And Divya, what was the idea behind choosing this particular route?
The idea is to pack it with as many tourist spots and as many places of interest as possible, so as to give people the feel of the entire stretch of the journey, of the states they are passing through, of the history of those spots, of the topography, of the ecology, and all such factors, while making sure that they stay in luxury environment.
Okay, so the Ganga Vilas started its maiden journey last week on Friday. Could you talk about who are the passengers that are currently on this cruise?
Yeah, the first trip has 32 tourists from Switzerland. They have signed up for the entire length of the journey, which costs approximately 50,000 per person per day. The cruise actually set sail from Varanasi on January 13, but the tourists were taken on board on January 10 itself. So the first 2 days were spent in the waters of Varanasi while they witnessed the Ganga Aarti, and they also disembarked to make a trip to Sarnath. So those were the first 2 days, and now the cruise is slowly progressing, and currently it's passing through Bihar.
Also, Divya, during this trip, news broke out that before reaching Patna, the cruise actually got stuck somewhere. Could you talk about what was the reason for that and what the authorities had to say about it?
On Monday, it was reported that Ganga Vilas cruise got stuck in Bihar's Chhapra due to shallow water in the Ganga. So the cruise, which was scheduled to dock at the shore for the tourists to visit the archaeological site of Chirand, got stuck because of water deficiency in the Ganga near Doriganj area of the district. So, however, due to the shallow water, it was difficult to bring the cruise to the shore. In that case, boats were used to disembark the passengers from the cruise. They were taken to the shore in boats and their site visit was done. And then again, they were put up in boats and brought back to the cruise. However, we spoke to Raj Singh, who is the CEO of Antara Cruises, the operator. So he told that the cruise was not stuck. In fact, this is how they had planned it, because they factored in all the water channel and what will be the water condition. So they had already arranged for the small ships or tenders for the passengers to disembark. And it's not that it got stuck. This is how it was planned. In fact, he also claimed that the program has been designed keeping in mind the water availability in the river system so that there is enough water at the time of operation. He says that the Ganga Vilas will sail for approximately 300 days every year. So they have to factor in everything.
Right, and the operator even told you that the cruise is fully booked till the month of March next year. And the government has also been promoting it a fair bit. So how significant is this for India's tourism? And have we seen other cruises like these in the past?
See, we had private operators doing small cruises, like a day-long cruise, like 2-day cruises, or like a few hour cruises in some rivers. For example, in Varanasi also that happens. But this is like the entire journey of 51 days. This is something which has not happened in India before. In fact, the government is claiming that this kind of a cruise has not happened anywhere in the world. And now, banking on this, they are saying that there is a need to develop river cruise tourism in the country. Union Shipping and Ports Minister Sarbanand Sonowal said that river tourism circuits will be developed and they will be integrated with the existing tourism circuits to create a development in this sector. In fact, India has 8 river cruise vessels currently operational between Calcutta and Varanasi. There is also some smaller cruise movement in the Brahmaputra River in the Assam area. But the idea is to create experiences, is to create circuits and make it like a sustainable and more viable option for travel and tourism, and also getting foreign tourists taking these journeys because they are luxury vessels. So the government says that the economic potential of cruise tourism is expected to rise from $110 million currently to no less than $5.5 billion in the coming years.
And in the end, we tell you the story of a gangster who is now starring in a movie inspired by his life. This particular gangster is Sabu Praudin, aka Gundu Kandu Sabu, and he is now starring in Kappa, a Malayalam action thriller.
നിന്റെ കൂടപ്പുറപ്പിന്റെ കൈ കിടന്ന മോതിര അതങ്ങ് വെട്ടിയെടുത്തേരെ.
Sabu grew up in Trivandrum, and up until college, his life was like many other boys around him. He would hang out with friends and hope that he would someday land a government job. But then one day something happens that makes him seek revenge, and that turns him into a gangster. Now, if this sounds like a movie, well, that's because now it is one. In this segment, Indian Express's Anandu Suresh joins us to talk about how that came to be and what actually led Sabu down this dark path.
So, Sabu Praudin alias Gundugaadu Sabu was a gangster who sent shivers down the spines of many in the Thiruvananthapuram of the early 2000s. So basically, Gundugaadu, also known as Barton Hill Colony, is one of the poorer neighborhoods of Kerala's capital. And Sabu Praudin, Sabu, he's known by both names. He grew up there and he became a gangster in the aftermath of his brother's murder. So his brother was murdered in broad daylight by another gang lord named Viren Selvan at Manakkad in the capital city. And Sabu himself says that since he was very close with his brother, he got into this field in the aftermath, and because he wanted to stay alive, as the rivals of his brother were actually plotting to end him as well.
And Anandu, could you tell us a bit more about his background and what his life was like before it took this dramatic turn?
So Sabu himself says that his brother used to get involved in troubles a lot, but he was never a person like that. In fact, he was a very bright student and he was very much active in the cultural circles while he was pursuing his undergraduate degree at University College in Thiruvananthapuram. So he was more of a person who used to discourage his brother from doing all these things. He would constantly ask him, why are you getting into trouble? Isn't it too much and all? But whenever his brother got into troubles, according to Sabu himself, he never gave up on his brother. He was always there for him and he always had his back. So that is probably why they wanted to finish him off as well, because they thought that if we let Sabu go, that he would come back seeking revenge. Though I'm not sure if that was Sabu's intention ever. Maybe, maybe not. But according to various news reports, Gundugadu Shaji, who is Sabu's brother, was involved in criminal activities, including gang wars, though they too don't explicitly tell or have reported as to what all cases he was a part of. However, Sabu, on the other side, was mostly part of gang wars, and most of the cases he had were associated with gang wars, including the use of weaponry and attack on other people. That was his backstory as the gangster.
Yeah, and his story so far does seem like something right out of a movie plot. But tell us, how did he actually end up becoming an actor?
So according to Sabu, he always was interested in acting and in movies and theatre and stuff like that. So University College in Thiruvananthapuram is actually very famous for producing some great artists, including, I've mentioned in the copy as well, the writer of the movie Kappa, G.R. Indugoban, was Sabu's junior in University College Trivandrum. Though I'm not sure if they were close when they were in the college, but later they became even this Ashok Arnath, who is the director of a few other films of Sabu, is also a product of University College. So it's like a capital, the capital city's capital of cultural activities. So he was always interested in those things. However, life took an unfortunate turn and he ended up becoming a gangster instead, but he always had that passion for acting. So that is why probably when he stopped or he started to dissociate himself with the world of crimes, that he turned to his one true passion, which is acting. And he started off with a few serials and short films or something like that. But then he was sooner or later identified and recognized, and he started acting in his first film was Kandi by Ashok Arnath. And then Ashok Arnath himself told the Indian Express that he was immediately blown away by Sabu's talent. So first when Ashok Arnath found Sabu, Ashok Arnath was more of the idea that, okay, I will help this man change into something that he wasn't until today, to give him a sort of a redemption and stuff. But Ashok Arnath was immediately impressed by this man and his sheer talent and his dedication and his willingness to actually submit himself to the director.
Okay, now he's starring in the film Kappa that was released last month. So talk about what this film is about.
So the movie Kappa, which is actually a name comes from Kerala Anti-Social Activities Prevention Act, which was devised by the Kerala government to control antisocial activities in Kerala. The movie was based on a short story written by G.R. Indugoban named Shangumugi. So when Indugoban started having this idea of writing a short story named Shangumugi, so he was also a journalist with over 15 years of experience, and he was working in Thiruvananthapuram. So he knew the darker sides of the capital city. So when he started writing that short story, he began collecting stories of various people with dark past or who were associated with the world of crimes and all, among whom Sabu was a tall figure. So he took a lot of elements from Sabu's life and started writing Shangumugi. And later, Indu Gopan got an opportunity to turn it into a film, and they titled it Kappa. And Shaji Kailas, who is one of the most celebrated filmmakers, hit makers in the history of Malayalam film, was delivered like multiple hits. Though he was not very active or was having a rough patch for some time till a few years back, now he's back in action. And so they started making the movie, and they introduced a lot of fictional elements and also a lot of other incidents that happened, other crimes that happened into this movie, and completely made, according to Sabu himself, a cinematized version of his life.
Okay, and what role does Sabu play in the movie? Is he playing a gangster like the one he was in real life?
So Shabu also got to play a role of a district collector named Raj Mohan, though it is small. He got to play a person that he was completely not, or maybe he could have become if his life hadn't taken that unfortunate turn at one moment, because in our story we have mentioned that he was a person who dreamed of landing a government job one day.
Okay, so he's playing this district collector, but since the movie is inspired by his own life, who is playing the role of Sabu in the movie?
So, actors Prithviraj Sukumaran played the character Kottamadu, which is mostly based on Sabu's life. And even the writer G.R. Indu Gopan told the Indian Express that while writing the character Kottamadu, he had taken a lot of elements from Sabu's life in creating the incidents that happened and even his look. In one of the earlier interviews, which is to one of the Malayalam channels, Sabu himself said that even the outlook, the makeover that Prithviraj received for the film had a lot to do with Sabu's complete look during his days as a gangster. So the character was mostly based on Sabu's life, but though not completely. And Prithviraj played the character, yes.
You were listening to Three Things by The Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.